Diya podachaya Shoto he amaya Tomar charana dhari Diya podachaya Shoto he amaya Tomar charana dhari Vaishnava Thakura Doyada Shagara Edase Koruna Kori Chaya Bhega Dhomi Chaya Dosha Shodhi Joy Duna Deho Dashe Joya Bega Dhomi Joya Dosha Shodhi Joya Guna Deho Dashe Jaya Shota Shanga Deho e Amar Bosheche Shangera Ashe Bosheche Shangera Ashe Jaya Shota Shanga Deho e Amar Bosheche Shangera Ashe Vaishnava Thakura Doyada Shagara Edase Koruna Kori Edase Koruna Kori Ekaki Ama Nahi paya bala hari nama sankirtane Hari nama sankirtane Ekaki ama nahi paya bala hari nama sankirtane Tumi kripa kori shraddha bindu diya Deho Krishna namadhane Tumi kripa kori shraddha bindu diya Deho Krishna namadhane Shraddha bindu diya Deha Krishna namadhane Vaishnava Thakura Doyada Shagara Edase Koruna Kori Krishna se tomar Krishna dite paro Tomar shakati ache কৃষ্ণ সে তোমার কৃষ্ণ দিতে পারো তোমার শক্তি আছে আমি তো কঙ্গাল কৃষ্ণ কৃষ্ণ বলে দয়িত পাছে পাছে আমি তো কঙ্গাল কৃষ্ণ কৃষ্ণ বলে দয়িত পাছে পাছে বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর দয়ার সাগর এদাসে করুণ করি Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Joyam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Purivrajagacharya Ishtatar Sarasashan Srila Abhay Charanarvina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupad ki ISKCON Pradishtat Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Prabhupada Shubhatirobhav Titi Mahamohotshav ki, Shishinitai Gaura Shiranata Brahmanande. Om Agyana Tivanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshush Unmilitam Yena Tashma Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shamate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shandavani Prashtadadeshtarne. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Ram. Today we are celebrating the holy disappearance day of ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada departed from this world in the holy month of Kartik in Vrindavan Dham in 1977. How many years ago is that now? 44 years ago. Srila Prabhupada was exemplary in every aspect of his life. He mentioned that Mayapur is his place of worship, Mumbai is his office, and Vrindavan is his home. So seeing that his body was coming to an end of its existence on this planet, Srila Prabhupada retired to Vrindavan. I heard that in those last days, Prabhupada, he wanted to preach and travel. And even though he was sick, he was that year, that 1977. I guess most of you weren't born. Fortunately, I was born. Fortunately, I was on the planet when Prabhupada was on the planet. Fortunately, and Prabhupada visited the city where I lived, so I came close, and I saw it in the newspaper, Ratha Yatra, and different things. Prabhupada visited that city 4 or 5 times, Melbourne, Australia. Although I was only young, 10, 11, 12 years old, so I never understood the significance. But hearing about Prabhupada actually awakened Krishna consciousness in my heart. Hearing about Prabhupada coming to the city and Prabhupada, and of course Prabhupada's followers delivered me. I was fortunate to join the temple, Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir, when there were many Prabhupada disciples were in the temple. It was only 7 years after Prabhupada had departed. It was 7 years after Prabhupada. 8 years, 7 years. 7 years I began coming to the temple and I joined. So it was not long after Prabhupada had departed, just 7, 8 years. And Prabhupada's disciples, many of them in the temple. And so we're able to experience this movement in the mood of the original mood of the Krishna consciousness movement that Prabhupada instilled in his disciples. We were able to experience that mood because of joining closely after Prabhupada departed. Because we have but just see already here we are at ISKCON Center, there's no Prabhupada disciples here in Jagannath Puri. So Srila Prabhupada, he appeared on this planet 1896. Not just for his disciples. It's not. Of course, being a disciple of Prabhupada is obviously a very special fortune. But it's not that Prabhupada's mercy is only restricted to those who he initiated. Because Prabhupada gave his association through his movement, and through his teachings, which are the fundamental philosophical doctrines of our movement. Everything is based on Srila Prabhupada's teachings, and in this way the mission of the Krishna consciousness movement is Srila Prabhupada's mission, and everybody who comes to this movement now and in generations to come, in fact, although it's not written, but Prabhupada mentioned 10,000 years this movement will, Prabhupada's ISKCON, this movement. And Prabhupada achieved so many extraordinary things. Of course, perhaps we can move the harmonium. Mahaprabhu prediction, Prithividiache Joto Nagaradigram Shabatra Procha Hoibemurnam. Mahaprabhu said that in Ramkeli, or Gouda, when he was going there to deliver Rupa and Sanatan. And the vision of Mahaprabhu is that the Sankirtan movement would spread all over the world, and Krishna's name, Pritibiti Ache Jota Nagoradi Gram. Jota Nagoradi Gram. Nagor means town, and Gram means the village. So Jota Nagoradi Gram. In all towns, and it means in every town and village. In every town and village. Sabatra Amar Amar Procha Hoibe Murnam. So the chanting of the Krishna Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Mahaprabhu predicted that would be spread all over the world. Now, you were born in India, Bharat Bhumi. I think everybody here born in Bharat Bhumi. So it is a great fortune to be born in Bharat Bhumi, because the presence of Krishna's name is very prominent. Just like you go on the main road here, you'll see Purushotam Textiles, Balaji Emporium, everywhere. Mahakali Tea Stall. But this is a great fortune of being born in India, that one is hearing the name of Krishna. One is hearing the names of Krishna all the time. And here the temples and Ma Ganga, so many Tirthastan, Bharat Bhumi, it's Punya Bhumi. And to take birth here is a great fortune, because one is already progressive on the path of going back to Godhead. If one takes birth in India, then already they are at an advantage for achieving the goal of life, compared to those who take birth in other places. So this is an extraordinary thing, what Srila Prabhupada has done. Apurva. It is not, it never happened before. It never happened. The name of Krishna came out of India. Maybe a few people in the dictionary you see this and that, a few things. But Krishna consciousness and the holy name of Krishna, Mahaprabhu's vision, the fulfillment of that, it never happened. It was impossible. It was considered impossible for that to, even great acharyas, the great acharyas, Jamunacharya, Ramanujacharya, the great Vaishnava acharyas, the great Vedantic acharyas, Sankaracharya, they did not do this. They did not spread the name of Krishna all over the world. This is exclusively the achievement of His divine grace. The vision, actually, today we're very fortunate to be able to be sitting here in Bhakti Kutir, the bhajan stan of Srila Thakur Bhaktivinoda, who lived here and did bhajan. And we heard that the final period of Thakur Bhaktivinoda's life, he was here in his Babaji doing a bhajan. And I think I mentioned in our talk yesterday, you can imagine what Puri would have been like 100 years ago, 120 years ago. You could imagine, no rickshaws, no autos, no concrete. There's sandy paths, maybe a few buildings, cottages, Haridas Thakur Samadhi here. Thakur Bhaktivinoda staying here doing bhajan. A very special place here, a special place. And when we see Prabhupada here sitting alongside Thakur Bhaktivinoda, it's a Apurva Shundar Darshan, because Thakur Bhaktivinoda is the founder. He is established the mission of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. Even though Mahaprabhu spoke that benediction 500 years ago, but after Mahaprabhu's departure or prakat, then the acharyas, the preaching in India, Shyamananda, Srinivas, Narottam, and then the acharyas, Baladev Vidyabhusan, Nityananda Prabhu preaching, but this was Oriya, Shyamananda Prabhu, Bengal, Nityananda Prabhu, Narottam Mahashai, the preaching. And practically speaking, the Krishna consciousness movement after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance on this planet, practically speaking, the Krishna consciousness movement only existed in Bengal, Orissa and Vrindavan. Practically speaking, chanting Hare Krishna, reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu's philosophy only existed in Bengal, Odisha and Vrindavan. The Goswamis, and why in Vrindavan? When Mahaprabhu first went to Vrindavan, there was a Mahaprabhu. They didn't even know where was Radha Kund, Shyam Kund. So Vrindavan, as we know it today, was established by the Goswamis, the 6 Goswamis, H.I. Goshai, Jabe Braja Bhumi Bash, Radha Krishna Nitolila, Korila Prakash. The Goswamis actually revived Krishna consciousness in Vrindavan. The Goswamis were predominantly Gaudiya. I think Gopal Bhatta Goswami was South India. The Gaudiya, Rup Sanatan, Jeev Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, from Bengal. And so therefore the Gaudiya presence became established in Vrindavan. And then the Goswamis, the Narottam, Shyamananda, Srinivas, they went to Vrindavan and they studied under Jeev Goswami. And then they came and preached in Orissa and they preached in Bengal. But that's the full extent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. The vision of the holy name being spread all over the world was not, there's no question of that happening even immediately after Mahaprabhu's departure, and even though he empowered many preachers. Nityananda Prabhu, there was a preacher in Bengal. Nityananda Prabhu's son, Virabhadra, is a great preacher, is an incarnation of the Lord, but not outside of Bengal. Krishna consciousness, not outside of Bengal and Odisha and Vrindavan. So Thakur Bhaktivinoda, he's a Nitya Siddha, an eternally liberated soul, and he came for the purpose of serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But in his early life, he did not know about Mahaprabhu and Krishna consciousness very extensively. He was influenced by the foreign rule of India, education, and the philosophers of the time were also influenced by Western values and Christianity, etc. And so various Vedic, the conclusions of the Vedic scriptures were also not understood. Mahaprabhu's philosophy had been captured by the Sahajiya Sampradayas. The Sahajiya Sampradayas in Bengal, particularly East Bengal, who had compromised the pure teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in this way the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission at the time of Thakur Bhaktivinoda had actually fallen into ill repute amongst the educated class. And still in Bengal now, you'll see that in Bengal we still we're not so much able to influence the educated class. You'll see that the Gaudiya Math preaching is mainly, it's simple people, village people. Of course, ISKCON has a different mood, and ISKCON is changing everything and attracting the world. But we're just describing the circumstances when Prabhupada came. Krishna consciousness was not prominent. And Thakur Bhaktivinoda himself, he was confused. And it took him some time in association and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which he received in Dinajpur, which he couldn't find. He couldn't find, just try to understand the circumstances of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission prior to Prabhupada's appearance. Even Thakur Bhaktivinoda was a learned scholar, and he knew Sanskrit, he knew other languages, he was already writing, he was literate, he was already writing books. But he had he didn't know about Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Chaitanya Charitamrita was not available in Bengal. That's how much lost Mahaprabhu's movement had become. The Chaitanya Charitamrita was not even known in Bengal. And by great fortune in East Bengal and now modern day Bangladesh, a place called Dinajpur, I visited that place. Kalachandi, a beautiful temple, famous temple of Krishna, is there. So at that town was somewhat flourishing under the patronage of the Thakur. The Thakurs, the Bengali Vaishnav landholders, had influence in that town, and so therefore there was some culture of Vaishnavism there. And Thakur Bhaktivinoda became a magistrate supervising that town. At that time he found the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it was handwritten version. Having read Chaitanya Charitamrita, Thakur Bhaktivinoda, then he said that he understood the Srimad Bhagavatam, prior to which he didn't understand. And then he became fully convinced about the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Thakur Bhaktivinoda, and then he began to write the literatures. He wrote commentaries on Chaitanya Charitamrita and the other Gaudiya texts he commented on. And then also, of course, he served in Jagannath Puri. That's another, we won't go into that, Thakur Bhaktivinoda. But then he was fortunate, I think that actually he resigned because he wanted to get service in the Nadia district, and he wasn't getting it, so he resigned. So then the government, because they considered him so valuable, that they gave him employment as a district magistrate of Krishnanagar. So then he accepted that, and he lived Navadip, sometimes Navadip, and then he built Thakur Bhaktivinoda built his ashram in, that's Shukada Kunj Swa in Surabi Kunj, Sukada Kunj. He built that. And in 1896, he wrote English book, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and that book was sent to Canada. And this was a major Srila Thakur Bhaktivinoda writing the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. I think the book was called The Precepts of Lord Chaitanya, Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya. That book in English, and Thakur Bhaktivinoda sent that to Canada. It was published. It made it to McGill, the library in which place in Canada? I forget. Montreal. I believe it's still there. So that was a major achievement in the spreading in fulfilling of Mahaprabhu's mission, that the holy name be spread all over the world. That was since the time of Mahaprabhu, that was the most significant progress. Thakur Bhaktivinoda writing that book in English, Precepts of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sending it to the West. Now, coincidentally, or you could say by the arrangement of the Lord, Srila Prabhupada appeared on this planet in that year, 1896, appeared on this planet. And then Thakur Bhaktivinoda, he wrote in his writings that when will the day come when the Europeans, the Russians, and the English and the French, they come together and they, along with the Bengali and Odia Vaishnavas, chant the holy name, raising their hands. So he had this desire, Thakur Bhaktivinoda. So in this way, he's considered the founder of the World Sankirtan movement, Thakur Bhaktivinoda. He wrote about that specifically. Although Jiva Goswami wrote about the Vishva Vaishnav Raja Shabha, a universal fraternity of Vaishnavas, there was no specific objective of Thakur Bhaktivinoda. Mentions the Russians, the English, the French. He was in the English government. He knew these different people and these different nations, and he understood that Mahaprabhu's mission is meant for delivering all the worlds and delivering the foreign people. And Thakur Bhaktivinoda prayed for an assistant, although he had 11 children, and many of them were Vaishnavas. In fact, many even started their spiritual movements. Many of the offspring of Thakur Bhaktivinoda, extraordinary family lineage. He prayed for a ray of Vishnu. And in what year was Siddhanta Thakur born? 76. Here in Jagannath Puri. We took prasadam there yesterday. So now we're mentioning the glories of that place where we took prasadam yesterday. The birthplace of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Puri Bashi. And the great Acharya who appeared, and such extraordinary things about his birth. And he was placed on the chariot of Lord Jagannath, and Lord Jagannath's garland fell down, and so many extraordinary things. And already Thakur Bhaktivinoda was training him in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement in his early years. When he was 7 years old, already he'd memorized whole Bhagavad Gita, and he would study his father's books. He also initiated him in Kumra mantra and gave him a deity to worship. And then Srila Saraswati Thakur, he became more and more absorbed he also, Nityasiddha, eternal associate of Lord, appeared. And even though he was so highly intellectual and offered so many prestigious posts because of his intellectual acumen, he was not interested in that. And even the post of I think it was philosophy or Sanskrit or something of Kolkata University, or Jyotish, he wasn't interested in that. He was also the private tutor of the king of Tripura and was tutoring his children. So, and I believe the king of Tripura maintained the patronage of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur his whole life, even though he moved on from tutoring his children. So now we come to 1918, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. We're going to Mayapur. We can pray today. Now we can take this opportunity today in this most holy place of Jagannath Puri. Vrindavan and Navadip are also present here. Actually, this is the area of Navadip, considered non-different from Navadip, this area of Jagannath Puri where Saraswati Thakur's, where Srila Haridas Thakur's Shamadhi. You have to visit this afternoon after the program. You can visit Shamadhi of Haridas Thakur. Also, there's some very interesting deities just on this street here. Sarup Damodar and Jagadananda Pandit worshipable deities are just around the corner here in small temples, so you can visit those this afternoon. So, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was residing in Mayapur, performing the Satakoti Nam Brata. 10,000. I think that's 10 million names of the Lord. And it took him several years. And he performed that in now what is Chaitanya Mat. And Radha Kund, Sham Kund, Chaitanya Mat, where his Samadhi is, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Samadhi. And Samadhi of Bhaktivinoda Thakur also we can visit. We will visit Samadhi of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So he was there performing the tapasya. And for many years, and long hair, beard, and one pot under the umbrella, Harinam all day, eating once a day only for many years. Great austerity that no ordinary person can perform. No Vaishnava can perform austerity like that. For many years. In modern age, Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's tapasya is unprecedented. No one performed tapasya like he performed. And he was carrying on in that way, and then eventually in a dream the Panchatattva appeared to him and scolded him, all of this tapasya, now you go and preach and we will be with you. Panchatattva appeared in the dream. So in 1918, Srila Sri Thakur, he went to Calcutta, he established the first Gaudiya Math, Old Tadanga Road. So the good news is that ISKCON has acquired the first Gaudiya Math temple in Old Tadanga Road, Kolkata. ISKCON has acquired that. Ananga Mohan Prabhu, you know Ananga Mohan Prabhu in Kolkata. Ananga Mohan Prabhu has been last year developing, renovating. You can see the progress. So that original Gaudiya Math, where Srila Thakur remained for 10 years. That was his Kolkata center for 10 years. Until in 1932, he opened Bagh Bazaar temple and then moved there. So he was there from so this just a few years into the Gaudiya Math preaching. There are a few sannyasis, not many. Later, we'll tell you more. But at that time, in 1920, 21, 22, Gaudiya Math had just begun. Gaudiya Math had just begun. I'm not sure if they had centers outside of Kolkata at that time. Probably not. Probably just that Old Tadanga Road center. And then Narendranath Malik, Srila Prabhupada's school friend, had got the association of Sanatana Thakur, and he was inducing Abhay Charan Day, he was inducing him to come and see Sanatana Sri Thakur. At that time, Srila Prabhupada, he was a little hesitant. He's saying, I know these sadhu babas in Kolkata. I know every day Gaur Mohan, Prabhupada's father, would host at least 4 sadhus. Can you imagine who does that now in Mumbai? These Mumbai Basis, they're very proud that I live in Mumbai, I'm a businessman. But how many of them are hosting every day 4 sadhus? Minimum. No one is doing that now. And many of them were not qualified. And Prabhupada was seeing these sadhus. And Prabhupada said even he saw one sadhu that he lived with his family, wife and some children. And then in the morning he would put on saffron cloth and go out and beg. And come back in the evening and take it off. That's 100 years ago. That's 100 years ago. What to speak of now? What can you expect from the sadhus? 100 years ago they were doing that. So anyway, Narendranath, he induced Prabhupada to go and then went upstairs on the roof. So next year there's opening. That will be 100 years of the time of meeting next year, 1922. So 2022 is next year. So there we will be the grand opening of Old Tadanga Road, grand opening of ISKCON Old Tadanga, original Gaudiya Math temple. Grand opening will be next year. It's 100-year anniversary. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. 100-year anniversary, and it's very wonderful that we'll be opening that project, and then devotees from all over the world, they can come to that place, and they can roll in the dust of the place where Sanatana Saraswati Thakur first gave Prabhupada the order to preach Krishna consciousness in English language all over the world. And devotees from all over the world will come to Old Tadanga, Kolkata, to take darshan of that holy Tirthastan. Even the devotees from Mumbai can also come. So when Prabhupada went upstairs onto the roof and Srila Thakur was sitting there, a few disciples. This is early in the preaching. I mean, later you couldn't even get close to Srila Thakur. He's surrounded by his sannyasi disciples. Then 1 or 2 brahmacharis were there. He was a sannyasi already. He gave himself sannyas, actually. In fact, we heard from Bhakti Vigvanasa Narasimha Swami Maharaj a few days ago. We were at Chaitanya Math, and he was saying how the devotees described that we usually say he sat in front of the picture and gave himself sannyas, but actually the story goes that he went into the temple, they shut the door, he was inside the temple, and he could, the devoted brahmacharis outside, they could hear the Lord talking to him and initiating him in sannyas. So he began his preaching, and then Prabhupada, along with Narendra Nath Malik, they came before Srila Thakur. Now Srila Prabhupada, he was very fortunate because he was born in a Vaishnava family. That means from child, he never took meat. Gaur Mohan, they never made anything, eggs, chicken, anything in the house, in Prabhupada's. And Prabhupada's father worshipped deities, Radha Krishna deities. He read Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he chanted on his japamala. And Prabhupada said that he learned everything about Krishna consciousness from his father, except preaching. He said his father Gaur Mohan Prabhupada said he was pure devotee, but he wasn't preaching. He would come home in the evening, he was business, family, and he would chant on his beads and read Chaitanya Charitamrita, read Srimad Bhagavatam, but he wasn't preaching. So you can see once again the mood of the Vaishnavas, even before Bhaktivinoda, it wasn't not so much preaching mood. Although Mahaprabhu has established this as a precept of his movement, that it had been lost. So Thakur Bhaktivinoda, he revived the preaching. It's not sufficient that you chant Hare Krishna yourself. That's not Mahaprabhu's movement. We quoted the verse yesterday. Kali Juge, Juga Dharma, Namer Prochar, Toti Lage Pita Borna Chaitanya Avatar. Juga Dharma, Namer Prochar is the Yuga for the age, the Dharma for the age, and to establish that, Mahaprabhu has come. So the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu means that to be a genuine follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu means that you have to give your energy to spread the holy name. If you want to become dear to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then you give your life to spreading the holy name of Krishna and do welfare for others. So Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was sitting there, and he has this preaching spirit. His preaching spirit. It wasn't there amongst even the Sahajiya Sampradayas, the Vaishnava Sampradayas, but they're not preaching. They're just little communities, they're getting donations, they're happy like that, but none of them are preaching. So Prabhupada came, and then because he was from a Vaishnava family, Prabhupada, he immediately he could recognize the tilak marks on the arms of Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, on his forehead. So Prabhupada, he immediately paid obeisances, Dandavat Pranam, because he was sannyasi. Narendra Malik also, they were both Vaishnava family. He played the Dandavat Pranam. And Prabhupada says that before he even was able to get up and sit, and he's getting it before he could even take his seat. Sanatana Saraswati Thakur ordered him, preach Krishna consciousness in English language all over the world, before he could even sit down. And Prabhupada was shocked that first of all, without any introduction, without any relationship being established, this person could be so bold. How this person could be so bold. He was obsessed. It came out of his mouth the first thing. And Prabhupada wasn't a foreigner, Prabhupada was educated. That was all, his qualification. You're educated. Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, you immediately see these two young men. They were aristocratic Bengali Vaishnava men. Educated, aristocratic Bengali Vaishnava men. Cultured. And quality. And immediately Sanatana Saraswati Thakur thinking, hey, Krishna has sent me these. So if Srila Saraswati Thakur, he ordered Prabhupada in English language, you preach Krishna consciousness all over the world, and Gaudiya Math had just begun a few years. That means that at that time, any opportunity he got as a possibility of spreading Krishna consciousness in English throughout the world, Srila Saraswati Thakur was looking for, he was trying to seize upon. So you can understand how much he was desirous of this. It's not that it came out after some time. Okay, well, you could do this. No, it's the first thing he said. So that means that the spreading of Krishna consciousness all over the world is actually the priority of our main business. Our main business. The first thing, if they're going to say anything to this person, let me get the main thing. So Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, right from the beginning of his mission, he was trying to inspire his followers. He sent sannyasi disciples to the UK in the 1930s, because then India was still a sovereign territory of Britain. So there was communication. In fact, in his childhood, Prabhupada's mother and others were one of Prabhupada's uncles. They were considering sending Prabhupada to London to do law, and they could have done that. And Gaur Mohan said, no. Yes, he'll get the degree, but he'll pick up the habits because of association, the meat eating, and he'll become meat eating, drunkard, woman hunter, which is the quality of the foreigners. They eat meat, they get intoxication, and they promiscuous activity. Even then, they knew this is what the foreigners are like. You send him there, he'll become like that. There was one story I tell. A couple of years ago, there was it was after these. There was one Indian man. He was shot in a bar in America. It came into the news. It was. He was shot in the bar. Someone thought he was like a terrorist because he was Indian. They didn't even know what his. They think Indian terrorist. They were attacking the Sikhs as well. So anyway, he was shot and killed in a bar. His name was Subramanyam, from South India, and his wife was there, and he was saying, "Well, he was innocent. He was but I mean, what do you expect? He's in the bar at that time in the night. I mean, and he's South Indian Brahmin. But this is what happens when you go to the West, because everything is degraded, and you get you just become like the Western people. Even when Prabhupada in '66 he went, then there was some yoga teachers there, and Prabhupada was in his cloth, sannyas cloth, and he was cooking vegetarian, and they were saying, you can't do this here. You can't do this here. You have to adopt the ways of the Westerners. You wear the Western clothes, you eat like the knife and fork, even eat the meat and these things if you want to get established in a yoga teacher. They're eating meat and all of these things. And Prabhupada said, no, I have not come to adopt their customs. I've come to give them our custom, our culture. So Prabhupada was taken aback that first meeting. That he was. We could see the obsession of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur to spread Krishna consciousness in the West. At that time, Prabhupada already had 1 or 2 children. And he was thinking, if I had met earlier, I would have become a sannyasi, but I can't do that. No. So then it was almost 10 years later that Srila Prabhupada again met Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, almost 10 years later. Now, although Prabhupada was absorbed in his family and his business at that time, still he was already reading the books of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in that period. It mentions that when Prabhupada went to Prayag, he left Kolkata and went to Prayag and set up business there. It was called, I think it was called Day Pharmacy, or Prayag Pharmacy, I think. Prayag Pharmacy, yeah. So then, Abhay Charan Day and Sons, Prayag Pharmacy. So it mentions that he had his first daughter. Her name was Lakshmi, I can't remember. So Prabhupada, he taught her the Bengali translation of Gurvastikam, what we sing every morning, Sangsara Davan. It's a song by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. So, and Prabhupada taught the Bengali translation of that to his daughter Lakshmana. Sri Lakshmana is her name. Sri Lakshmana. So how did Prabhupada know about Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's Gurvastikam? Because he was reading the books of Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was reading those books. They were in Bengali. Many books the Gaudiya Math preachers, they gave Prabhupada. Prabhupada bought the books. So in that way he was associating. And then one day, some sannyasis, disciples of Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, they came into the pharmacy. And then Prabhupada again was able to connect with the followers of Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, and he helped them establish the Rupa Gaudiya Math in Prayag. He would preach with them. He would arrange his business connections for the sannyasis. And then, for the first, I think it was the first, it was definitely the biggest parikrama that Vrindavan had ever seen in 1932, when Sanatana Saraswati Thakur was taking, I don't know how many thousands of devotees. By this time, it's 10 years of preaching. And Sanatana Saraswati Thakur had established centers all over India and had thousands of disciples. And he was arranging the Brajamandal Parikrama. And Prabhupada heard about that, and Prabhupada wanted to join, but because of his business he was unable to do that. But he went for one evening. He went to Vrindavan, a place called Koshi. And Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, they'd never seen that thing before, the Brajabasis, that they would set up tents and camp at night, and in the kitchen, and place for ladies, place for men. They'd never seen such a thing in the Brajabasis. These large parikramas, Sanatana Saraswati Thakur actually established this style of preaching. And then Prabhupada again after 10 years, he was able to see Sanatana Saraswati Thakur. And of course it gave Prabhupada such joy, because Prabhupada mentions that in the first meeting he accepted him as his guru. Why? Because he was such a character. He hadn't had extensive association, but he could feel the potency, the qualities of that person, that extraordinary person. And Prabhupada, he said he accepted him in his heart as his guru. Now 10 years later, he again came into the presence of Sanatana Saraswati Thakur. And Keshav Maharaj said, we're going to see Sheshashayi Vishnu, everyone can come, or you can stay and listen. His Holiness Guru Maharaj will speak, Prabhupada Guru Maharaj will speak. Tomorrow he's leaving. Most people went to see Sheshashayi. Prabhupada said, what will I do seeing Sheshashayi? Let me hear. And so he sat and he listened. He said he didn't understand everything. He understood some things. Prabhupada said he didn't understand everything. He was speaking in Bengali, sometimes in English, for 2 hours. And then there was 10 guests, and then there were also some sannyasis also becoming less and less. And then eventually Prabhupada retired evening. So Prabhupada said that class that he heard, that hearing that one class, the Ultadanga was a brief meeting. Hearing that one class in Vrindavan, Prabhupada said he was surcharged with transcendental knowledge and realization. One class from Sanatana Saraswati Thakur. He became surcharged with transcendental knowledge and realization from the one class. Because he's an extraordinarily qualified candidate. So he one class and he gets so much realization about Prem Bhakti and Krishna consciousness. So one class. Next day he's lining up, and Sanatana Saraswati Thakur comes, gets into the vehicle and goes. Prabhupada's standing there with the devotees as he drives off. And then he hears from Atul Das Brahmachari that again Sanatana Saraswati Thakur will come to, again he'll have a chance to see him. He'll come to Prayag and open the opening of the Rupa Gaudiya Math. And Prabhupada was very happy to hear, again I will see you. And Atul mentioned that there will also be initiation on that day. And so Srila Prabhupada, he inquired from Atul that, may I also take initiation? He had one class. And Prabhupada is ready to take initiation. And actually, we'll hear that when he was initiated, he received the name Abhay Charan. He said that he added on Arabinda, added on to the name. So he became Abhay Charan Arabindo Das. And he received the name, he received Japamala, he also received Gayatri Mantra. He received the first and second initiation, which was unusual. So when Atulananda, he mentioned that Prabhupada came and saw Sanatana Saraswati Thakur came to Prayag, and he was at the mat before the opening and in the evening, and Atulananda said, "Oh, this man, he's desiring initiation." In those days, a little easier, not like now in ISKCON, disciples course and so many things. He just, yes, he can take initiation. And Sanatana Saraswati Thakur said, "Yes, I have marked him." Even though he had only seen him in that Ultadanga evening and in the one class. Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, yes, he had thousands of disciples. He said, "Yes, I have marked him. He likes to hear. He likes to hear." And Srila Prabhupada explained that when he heard those words, that his guru was appreciating his quality, that he liked to hear. He said he'd never felt so much spiritual ecstasy when he heard his guru speak like that about him. "Yes, I have marked him. He likes to hear." And Prabhupada said that inspired him so much to hear from his guru and read his books and study. In those days, it's not like now. It's so easy for us. And the classes, they chase you. They come one after another on your phone. They don't leave you alone. These ISKCON preachers, they're everywhere. In those days, one lecture, and then he surrendered, became a disciple, and then again, no, maybe a lecture at the initiation. Yes, actually at the initiation, Prabhupada was ordered to study Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So there was a lecture at the initiation, and then he's gone. And then Prabhupada's just reading the books. But Prabhupada would read and study. Prabhupada, an ocean of transcendental knowledge. How in so many verses, do you ever hear the devotees are there, they're traveling with Prabhupada, he's memorizing verses in the taxi, and wait, and then Prabhupada ever memorizing verses? But Prabhupada, you can do a statistical analysis. How many verses Prabhupada quoted from memory? It's thousands of verses. How did he know those? Thousands of verses. He knows from memory. Sometimes he quote verses from memory. He only quote them once. He never quoted them again, but he knew them. Because in his years from 1933, after taking initiation, Prabhupada was reading. Up to the time he took sannyas, 20 years. He was studying the books of Sanatana Saraswati Thakur and preparing himself. And then there was some correspondence, and Prabhupada inquired. Actually, we'll come to that. So then Prayag pharmacy collapsed. Yashaham Anugrinami Harishetat Danam Shanai Bhagavatam. For those who I'm especially merciful. Harishetat Danam Shanai. I take away their wealth. When people hear this, they say, "Oh, don't chant Hare Krishna. Take away my wealth." And Prabhupada said this verse. Prabhupada said, "I am such a recipient of the special mercy, because whatever business efforts I worked for, they collapsed." And Prabhupada, the business in Prayag, it collapsed. And then so he decided to go to Mumbai. Prabhupada went to Mumbai because it was a bigger city, and he could set up a bigger operation there of pharmaceutical company, his own pharmaceutical company in Mumbai. And then, so in Mumbai, Prabhupada again, he came in contact with Bhakti Rashik Sridhar Maharaj, who was a young sannyasi preaching in Mumbai. And Prabhupada was initiated at that time, Abhay Charan Aravinda Das. And so he took it as a priority to associate with the sannyasis, and they formed a team. Prabhupada would get the business contacts, and they would go, they would meet those people. Sridhar Swami would speak, and then the other Swami, forget his name, he would request donations for ISKCON, for Gaudiya Math Mumbai development. So then in 1935, Sanatana Saraswati Thakur was here in Jagannath Puri in 1935 celebrating his Vyasa Puja. That would have been not here at that center, that came later. That would have been in his a temple which is just in front of Tota Gopinath Mandir, the Gaudiya Math there, where Sanatana Saraswati Thakur stayed in that place. Hopefully in December we can go to that place. I don't ever think I've ever been to that place. Yeah, so that place. I'd like to go there. So, you see, whatever I request of Sitaram Prabhu, he fulfills. So I made a request here that I could see that place. So it will happen. I'm sure it will happen. So then Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, he was there celebrating Vyasa Puja. Prabhupada was in Mumbai. And Prabhupada, he wrote an English poem. Because already at that time he'd been ordered to preach in English. You know English. Prabhupada learned English in Scottish church colleges. Prabhupada's English is, I think, better than anybody else in this room. The way they were training the English speaking, the Indian students in 1910, 1915, the way they were training them in English is far better English education than I ever received, even though I was honours English student in my country. Prabhupada studied all the English poets, Yeats, Coleridge, Alexander Pope. He studied Shakespeare. Who studied Shakespeare here? One or two. Yeah, I studied something. But Prabhupada would quote from Shakespeare. What is that one? That discretion is the best part of valor. Discretion is a better part of valor. That's Shakespeare. That's, I think, Macbeth. Prabhupada would quote Shakespeare. He would quote the English poets. To err is human. Variety is the mother of enjoyment. Variety is the mother of enjoyment. It's a Disraeli. He became the Prime Minister of England in the end, a poet. Prabhupada would quote. Prabhupada, he was very learned in English. So he wrote his Vyas Puja homage in English, a poem. And one line in that poem, Srila Prabhupada writes that Absolute is sentient, thou hast proven impersonal calamity, Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. And many other beautiful stanzas were there in English that Prabhupada wrote. Now when that poem came to the attention of Sanatana Saraswati Thakur, he was very overjoyed. And he kept that homage with him, and he would show respectable people that came that poem. And Prabhupada's godbrothers described that for some time. He was very much appreciative of that poem, and he would show, particularly that line. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. And he said that in this one line, he has described my mission and encapsulated my whole mission. And then Sanatana Saraswati Thakur said to his editors of the Harmonist magazine, which was an English publication, that whatever Abhay Charan Aurobindo Das writes, you publish it in English. And already we see the evidence that Srila Prabhupada received the full blessings and the potency of the Sampradaya through his Guru to preach in English language. He received the full blessings and potency of the Sampradaya to preach in English languages through the lips of Sanatana Saraswati Thakur. Whatever he writes, publish. I'm not sure that Sanatana Saraswati Thakur said that about any other disciple. Whatever he writes. In other words, you don't need to check it. Whatever he writes, you publish. And then that was 1935, and then in the next year, Sanatana Saraswati Thakur left. And before that, there was again, I think there was the meeting in Radhakund, another meeting in Radhakund, when he said, if you get money, distribute. He said, if you get money, distribute books. And therefore Prabhupada was so much obsessed with fulfilling this order of his guru. And he said in the lecture, distribute books, distribute books, distribute books. And Prabhupada said that my guru, why I'm stressing the distribute book, because my guru was so much after this. Opening the printing presses, he would for him the as sweet as the kirtan was the sound of the ching 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 ching, the printing press, printing the books. And then there was one letter when he wrote, well, how can I serve you? And Prabhupada received reply from Srila Thakur that, I don't know exactly, but I have full conviction that you can become a very expert English preacher, and I request you to preach in English language to religionists, to philosophers, and to people in general, the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so Prabhupada was very much clear on his mission to distribute books about Krishna consciousness all over the world. Now, why in English? In English, because English was the language of the world. So therefore, Prabhupada wrote in English, but the same mission is there to write in the other languages. You see in Prabhupada in Vrindavan, his room, and you see all the languages, Bhagavad Gita, all the languages. This is the same order. At that time, English. But then now beyond that, in other words, Srila Prabhupada, he was able to go beyond even the order of his guru. Because he's printed in English all the books, and then they're translated into so many other languages. Srila Thakur didn't say that. Prabhupada is gone more. And then His Grace Sitaram Prabhu also told me that Prabhupada said to Gopal Krishna Maharaj that my Guru Maharaj ordered me to preach in the West. I've done that. I've done that. And Prabhupada said, I have a desire to preach in India. So, Prabhupada preaching in India, and then he started this Hyderabad. I think Hyderabad Basi, I'm talking to the Hyderabad Basis. And Prabhupada personally went and preached in Hyderabad. Oftentimes devotees say, ask, how did you come to, they ask how you came to this movement. The devotees. When they ask devotees, so can you tell us how to come, how you came to this movement? You sometimes hear devotees, they tell that story. So I can only, after reflecting, when I reflect on more than 35 years in this movement, then how I came to this movement, the only reason, I can only think the answer is because Prabhupada came to Melbourne. And by some chance, I was born in Melbourne. So therefore, I was able, you could say there, in a boat goes and then there's waves, there's the reverberation. I was able to become affected by the reverberations of Prabhupada coming to that city. It was all over the news. Because Prabhupada came there. It had such an effect on the city. It's in the news headlines. He came there. You understand what I'm saying? Prabhupada personally preached. He went there. And had such an effect. And then these great devotees, Komra Prabhu, he delivered these great men, these great souls, and gave their lives. Komra Prabhu, he's still a devotee, famous cook, and he became, he delivered me. He delivered me. I was a student like you, and I was going to the restaurant, and Komra was the cook in that restaurant, and I was taking his prasadam, and then I met him, and then he ordered me. he gave me an order. He gave me service to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and I fulfilled that. As Prabhupada coming to my city. And then Prabhupada, they installed that, they opened the temple there, Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir. And Prabhupada installed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Radha Ballabh, as Radha Krishna Mandir, but Prabhupada, he called the temple Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir. And he personally installed Gaur Nityananda. Personally, and you can see the videos of Prabhupada in doing an abhishek. He's wearing his kurta. And they have big like soup like bowls for like you get in a and soup like soup spoon, because they didn't have the proper utensils for abhishek, like conch and these things. And you see Prabhupada, he's pouring yogurt and milk on Lord Nityananda with a big soup ladle, and the kirtan going on. And then Prabhupada sat on the Vyasasana. That Vyasasana is still there. And one of the services I had when I joined the temple was cleaning Prabhupada's Vyasasana every day. Clean. Prabhupada sat on that Vyasasana and he said that the people of Melbourne, after installing Gaur Nitai, Prabhupada sat on the Vyasasana and said that the people of Melbourne have become blessed because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared here. And then, that was in 1974. And then 10 years later, I was a student at college, and then I went. One friend said to me, "It's Krishna's birthday, let's go to the Hare Krishna temple." And so we went, and then I was able to bow down in front of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then a short time later, I moved into Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir, and I was able to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, bow down to his lotus feet, and go on Sankirtan. Because Prabhupada came there and gave us Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So there's so much we can say. There's so many dear servants of Srila Prabhupada here, and we request them to speak. And it's on the on the Tirubhav, the disappearance day of the Acharya, then we reflect on what His coming, how He has changed the world by coming to this world. We reflect on how He's changed this world by coming to the world. And we reflect on how His appearance has changed our lives personally. Srila Prabhupada Tirubhav Mahamahotsav ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Shamaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Hare Krishna.